Recruiter before as well, we always actually have an image in our head of what we want the perfect CV to be.
Okay.
And that's why majority of CVs just get click, click, click. It's like a Tinder swipe, literally.
Welcome to another episode of Think Beyond Possible. And today is a very special episode. Do you know why? I didn't prep him for this, and he's like, wait a second.
We should do that again.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So I wanted it that way. My new goal of the show is to make the guests as uncomfortable as possible. So we've set up little tricks.
Oh, yeah.
Your seat's going to get warm.
Have I got anything under my seat?
One of those
those fart things.
So actually, the inspiration for Think Beyond Possible goes back about 4 years to a career fair that we had held before COVID. Yep. And we had a lot. It was a great turnout. We had loads of hiring managers and HR professionals and recruiters come, and we had like 300 job seekers come, and it was a very robust day, a lot of commotion, hustle and bustle. And we did this little snippet fireside chat where I would bring up one representative from each company, and we would ask them 3 questions. What are you hiring for? What do you look for in a candidate? And what is your idea of culture? We would also give them some time to give some tips and tricks and hacks on what people could do if they wanted to work for them. And actually the responses that they gave were pretty incredible. And I think that there are things that people take for granted or otherwise something that you don't just get easily. Like you'd have to pay for maybe some sort of hiring consultant or career advisor. So I was like, wow, this is really good information and people should be taking notes because like literally they're giving you a back door into their company. If they're telling you how to reach out to them, what to put in your profile, how to get past their system, what to do in an interview. And it's like, wow, if everyone knew these things, they would be so much more confident going into this process. So a lot of people are batting their heads all the time. I can't get a job. I'm sending out blah, 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 X many CVs. You see it on Reddit. So we're going back to the roots, but this is going to be like an extended version of that. And today is just going to be chock full of knowledge from my buddy, Keir Oakes. And normally what we do is I do a little bit of a sort of conversation about their history to show the viewers, what you're about and why we should listen to you. But today, I'm going to let you introduce yourself real quick.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me on this podcast. So my name's Keir. Been basically a HR professional for the past 12 years. Worked in large MNCs, worked for a large recruitment agency. Done a lot of transformation and change. Loads of worked with different projects and worked with different types of people. So it's been an interesting journey for sure.
So I'm going to put you in an uncomfortable position, as many HR professionals do for us. And I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
Why should we listen to you today?
Well, you can or you don't. You don't have to, but you don't have to. But look, I think for me, I've been in HR, pretty much my whole career. I've been taught and trained by some of the best, HR and regional HR directors, who I'm still in contact with today. Worked with some great, clients over the years, and basically learnt really how to build those strong lasting relationships, and that's kind of like where I am today. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
You know your stuff. So Keir and I are actually off camera buddies, and we both have an affinity for fantastic sandwiches. So he's from Philadelphia. This guy knows his way around a Philly cheesesteak. So you know what, without further ado, let's get into the meat. Okay. So if I look at my computer for notes, don't even if you're talking, don't sweat it. I'm just getting it. So I had these questions vetted from a lot of individuals who would rate them and say, I love this question. I want this question. So we have millennials, we have Gen Z, as you would say, HR. First question. So people will claim that they submit 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 CVs on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're batting their heads because they're not getting any bites. They're not getting any feedback. They're getting nothing. And they're wondering, why am I not hearing back? So with that alone, what advice would you give for somebody to start getting a little bit more ROI for that particular volume of CVs?
That's a really good question. And actually, I've come across this quite a lot over my HR career, especially of people asking me, oh, so, I've sent my application 30, 40 times, but I'm getting no responses. It's not just a numbers game. It's got to be targeted and it's got to be very specific. If I'm really going into details and being very, very, very detailed to the specific job that you're applying to.
Okay. I do want to get back to that for sure. But you mentioned something that I want to tap into because I think there's depending on where you're from, you'll get varying degrees of responses. So for example, like me from the US, and there's been very seldom I would say that somebody tells you that you can't make a shift into a different industry. So sorry. I should say I feel like it's a more Western mindset to buy into the concept of transferable skills. Crossing
100%.
into industries, and people injure themselves when they don't get hear back from.
You need that sandwich.
Yeah. What? So you mentioned that like you got to be very specific about what industry you want to apply for, but in terms of somebody that would potentially want to dabble in a few different industries. Like you're at a point right now where you're like, I'm doing this, I'm not happy with this. My next logical step would be to continue down this path, but honestly, I really don't want to. How would you recommend that they sort of best set themselves up to at least make some sort of tangential move?
So when I was 18, just going into university, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no idea what I wanted to do. But then, after a while, you start to, listen to your own conscience. You don't listen to family. Look, they're really supportive. You've got that kind of like, house, bed, to sleep under and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's your decision, not theirs. So I think, having your own, kind of thoughts on what you really want to do, like your passions, I think is really important.
Funny, we talked about that last week on the last episode, passions. So that's interesting. But I am curious, would you say that the statement you made applies both in Hong Kong, and would you say the same for like London? Or let's just also say that if somebody is more than 4 or 5 years into the career and like, I really want to sort of reset, what would your advice for them be? Some people just don't want to continue down a certain path. And
which is fair enough. And look, I'm not here to say it's not possible. I've seen many people, prove me wrong, and I've seen many, friends change careers. So it's not a, definite you can't change. I think, you do have a higher chance in more Western organizations, in more Western countries. They're the type that are a lot more open-minded. Especially like the UK. I've worked in the UK, and everybody, especially now, is all about kind of like diversity, inclusion, and everything like that, and really wanting to make sure that people find the right path that's suitable for them.
Okay.
And I think there is that opportunity. Like I said again, early on in your career, it's all about exploring, which is completely fine. I think, for the first 2-3 years, it's completely okay to be like, look, I didn't really like that for, X, Y, and Z. However, I do think this is more suited. But then you've also got to think about what, qualifications do you need, or what things should you have to be able to prove to the hiring manager or the person that you're interviewing with that passion. And I think, again, going into, whether it's graphic design, actually taking, a course, like being a little bit more, clued up on, that, specific type of industry.
Okay.
That really, really helps.
All right. Makes sense. There's 2 ways I can go from here. I usually just branch off organically. So there's something I'm really hungry to ask, but I don't want to veer too far off of CVs just yet. So first question is, before we get into the process, 5 CV red flags.
Well, again, I think it's I'm quite traditional, to be honest. So the 5 red flags for me is a picture. Please do not put a picture on your CV. It does my head in.
You don't want to see how pretty I am?
I'm sure I'd love to see how beautiful. Hey, look at you. I'm right here. Kind of Chris Evans right in my face. I love it. No, but honestly, look, we've got social media, we've got LinkedIn, we've
Yeah.
got Facebook. I don't need to know what you look like. I
Right.
want to know what your work experience is.
Right.
Second thing is colors. I was actually looking at LinkedIn post today
Yeah.
about how to lay out your CV. And some of them were like adding colors and stuff. For me, no. You can read all the, posts and articles or whatever. For me, as a traditional type of HR person, stick to black.
Okay.
The colors. If you are more into design
Yeah.
and tech,
Glad you said
maybe,
that.
then sure. I'm very open to that.
Yeah.
However, if you're in traditional industries, for example, like banking or professional services, it's just got to be text formats and everything like that in terms of your experience, because they're not there to look at your that's like Calibri, or that's a
Oh.
nice Times Roman text.
Purple's his favorite color. Mine too. Get him in here.
They don't care, and I don't care.
Okay.
And
It doesn't bring you a little bit of joy. Woo.
it brings me joy when there's like an actual like decent CV in front of me. But anyway, so that's the second thing. I
Okay.
think the third thing is not putting dates on your CV.
Okay.
There's a lot of people I just see a year, and I'm like, oh, so you did a day or 2 weeks or 6 months? Like, what? How long did you work there
Yes.
for? So putting month dates is
Months
very,
and
very
dates.
important.
Okay.
So like I've seen loads of CVs where it's just years and it doesn't mean anything. And I think being specific on those dates is
Okay.
key.
Yeah.
Because just saying that you work from 2017 to 2018,
Yeah.
even though that's a year, that could literally be a month
Uh-huh.
or 2 months.
Yeah.
It's really important to employers to know how long you actually worked, because then you can justify the answers.
Yeah.
For example, if it was an internship, explain it was an internship.
Okay.
The other thing for me is also different
This
texts.
is number 4.
Yeah, number
Okay.
4, different texts. Keep it the same. Obviously, have a main header for your name, or I'm happy with people bolding, making your work experience, your education slightly larger, like
Right.
1 point larger. But different size text, inconsistent text, it's very difficult to read.
Okay.
So keep it the same, keep it consistent. And I'd probably say the fifth one is also not putting your education education qualifications. That really bugs me as well.
Okay. So I would assume that like sometimes, I will go through CVs myself, since we have a small team, or it doesn't matter. I'll get CVs that I
Yeah.
have to personally look through. And that really actually changes the perspective for you. Like once you're in a position where you have to actually review CVs, you start picking up on things that you're like, oh my God, what were they thinking? And you're like,
Yeah.
I used to do that. I used to put purple on my CV. No, but I guess it's a kind of like a death by a million cut sort of thing, where it's like, what are you thinking? Like it almost comes down to like just basic competency. Like why would you think it's okay to do this or use that, or like put the different formatting?
Yeah.
And like it's not like that. Maybe this person is like incompetent. It's a very strong word, but it's just like it seems like it just goes back to like general basic common knowledge.
So that's the thing. Everybody thinks, for HR, and recruiters and people in the profession, it's like it must be common sense. But actually, when we get asked, it's actually not, because a lot of people don't know this.
Right.
It seems common sense for us, because we work in this industry and we see 1,000 CVs
Yeah.
every week and whatnot. But actually, to the standard person who's actually not been trained or not been taught properly,
Yeah.
universities don't teach you this. They teach you, the curriculum. They
Right.
don't tell you how to lay out your CV, or they don't tell you how to address, certain things.
True.
And I think, that's starting to, be, something that people really actually acknowledge, and they need the help on that.
Right. So I'm just trying to put my finger on the
Yeah.
why though, because it seems so silly. Because at the end of the day, somebody might tell you, you know what, I don't care who such and such is or what skills they have, as long as they can get the job done, right? But then you're thinking like, well, how silly would it be for somebody to get offended by somebody putting colors in their CV or making a mistake with the text? Like that just might be a minor oversight. But I suppose if I were to put my finger on it, when you're going through so many CVs, sometimes you're just looking for somebody that seems like they have their head screwed on first, and it will surprise you how many people will show up with to a first call, and you'll be like, hey, did you do so can you tell me what my company does? And they're like, no. And you're like, it's common sense, man.
Exactly.
It's all these little common sense things, and I think common sense is super underrated. from
Yeah.
the job seeker side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, for as a, recruiter before as well, we always actually have an image in our head of what we want the perfect CV to be.
Okay.
And that's why majority of CVs just get click, click, click. It's like a Tinder swipe, literally. And that, I guess I put an analogy like this. Like, when you want to watch, you turn on Netflix, and you're just flicking through the,
The worst.
it's like, oh, what's interesting.
Oh.
But then you come across like this, top 10, and it's like that's the same thing for CVs. We look the same way as you want to watch something on Netflix.
Yeah, I mean that's not fair though, because those are colorful movie posters with famous
It's
actors.
still the same thing in correlation to CVs. We look for certain things.
Okay.
And if the CV is laid out immaculately, if it is very clear, concise to read, that's exactly my top 10. What I want to see.
That's
the
just a
equivalent
foot
of
in the door,
Netflix.
just to get you to read
Exactly,
it, but not
correct.
necessarily like, okay, we'll
Correct.
talk to you.
Exactly. It's kind of like, flicking through that top 10, then getting you to actually click on it and then actually read what, that show's about or what that film's about.
You use the word perfect CV. What is this perfect CV?
For me, it's definitely, your name, contact details on there. Very, very clear in terms of, you can have education first. I've heard mixture of things, but, you can do it different ways. But education first, very, very clear, in terms of your experience and your degree, then work experience. And, how it's done is, present and working backwards. Also explaining very clearly your job responsibilities. So it'd be company, then your title, and then on the far right hand side, it would be the years that you've worked.
Okay.
And then after that is bullet points of the job descriptions.
Okay.
Of your job responsibilities.
So this is like, for me, what you just described is like the face level perfect.
Correct.
But it's not like, there's so many more nuances, which is I think
Yeah.
what stresses people out.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what people get caught up on is the concept of showing your accomplishments, not just what you did, but what the results were.
Yeah.
And I think that, some people might even be encouraged to, this is where you get creative.
Yeah,
And you start
exactly.
using different words and customizing it for each
Yeah.
job, and maybe embellishing it a little bit to work in your favor, which I think is completely fair. I think that if you are good enough to sell yourself and fake it till you make it, and you're good enough to get into the interview, then by God, do it, as long as you could pull off the job. What do you think are the nuances that one needs to know for all of these things?
Yeah, I definitely think that, being able to be confident in yourself and the abilities that you have, the skill sets that you have, and being able to showcase that, and being able to put that on the CV articulately. I would say not over embellishing. I think, a little bit is okay. For me, I shouldn't really be saying that as a HR person, but, I definitely, have seen people, slightly, exaggerate their skill sets, but then they were perfect for the job.
Yeah.
And that's completely fine. It's only if you're saying that, you've done Python, and then when I come sit you down and say, right, can you do me a trial code? And they're like, that's the type of thing. It's like, no.
So this is where I hear varying degrees of advice from different people. Some people will tell you like, man, sometimes you'll look at a job description and like, it'll be like, what, are you kidding me? And in reality, like on the job, if I ever ask friends that got into engineering or something like this, I'm like, how much of the technical stuff do you use in your job? I'm like, honestly, not much. Or a lot of people be like, dude, you can learn most of this stuff on the job. It depends on who your manager is. So like, you're obviously coming from an interesting perspective because you were in HR for a bit, or you're on the, I don't want to call it the dark side, but for many job seekers, you are the evil big boss man that's like being like, no, by the books, when there's a lot of people out there that are teaching you how to be cunning enough to get past these ATS systems and give yourself a fighting chance. So like, let's just, in reality, okay, let's just say it's super technical. Like, okay, you need to be super proficient with, you could say Python, but where is there wiggle room?
Sure, I'd say, look, experience is one thing, technical skills is another.
Yep.
And I think they come hand in hand, but they're also quite separate. And what I mean by that is every industry needs experience, and every industry needs technical skills.
Yeah.
I would definitely say for tech, you 100% need the technical skills.
Yeah.
I'm not a tech person, but I definitely know when it comes to looking at websites and stuff, you need to know, how to code and how to, display it properly and, really get the viewer's attention to click on the website
Right.
or to make it as easy accessible around the website as possible. For other skills like sales is on the job training.
Yeah.
Honestly, for me, I was in sales before I joined recruitment. I didn't need any technical skills. It was to sell a product, but again, which is basically down to confidence and belief.
Yes.
There's a very famous author called Carlos Wallace, and he's always, his kind of like motto is, your beliefs determine your actions, and your actions determine your results.
The universe puts you in front of me today because this is all I talk about these days. I have the whole team drinking my Kool-Aid.
But it's true, because if you don't believe you're going to do it,
Yeah.
then you may as well just pack your bags and go home and be like, I can't do it. If you've got that mindset of, I can sell that product, if you can sell, ice to the Eskimos, you've solved everybody's problems. That type of thing.
Belief.
Right?
I am,
It's
therefore
belief.
I am. It's
really
a whole
down to
thing.
belief.
We can have a whole separate podcast on this. Maybe we'll do a
Honestly,
version 2.
it really inspires me, and that was kind of like the thing that got me going in sales, and even in life. I've applied that in life, and that's kind of like where I am today. It's all about believing in yourself and having that right mentality. And I
Yeah.
think this relates to the sending out the CVs. If you're like, oh, I've sent 30, 40 CVs, I'm not going to get a job.
Yeah.
You're not going to
You
get
can't.
a job.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's a
Like,
perfect
you've
example
got
of when
to
this
change that mentality.
makes sense.
You've got to
Yes.
be like, right, even if you are doing something wrong, you need to find that solution to rectify that,
Okay.
and then be like, right, what can I do better next time?
Okay. So that's a really good example. And I think that, that brings us into, luckily enough, sales is one of the highest paying positions in the world if you're good at it. So if you can master the art of believing in yourself and achieving these things, you can be making a lot of money.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I want to go back to one question that I had a really awesome guest on a couple weeks ago. And his whole thing was, you probably saw the reel. It got a lot of views on LinkedIn and IG. He was talking about how bars are the best place to get jobs and network. But he, literally, his whole thing is, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Exactly.
So let's go into that,
100%.
because in the beginning of this, we talked about, the whole, the CV process and HR and the good CV. But, this is the guy that's just like, you know what? As long as you're good at networking and you're good at selling yourself, you don't even need to go through that process. So in reality, from the HR side, before I get into the recruitment side of things,
Sure.
how valid is that?
I completely agree. With Hong Kong being the, being the hub of, so many different industries, you're going to come across so many different people on the streets and, in bars or restaurants or whatnot, and being able to utilize those connections is key. And I completely agree. I was about to say the same thing. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
The amount of people that I've helped find jobs just by asking friends, like, hey, I've got this sales guy, or hey, I've got this developer, are you open to me? Yeah, 100%. Same thing with my job. My first job when I got into recruitment, I didn't apply. I just basically said, had a friend saying, I think you'd be good at recruitment. Come.
You're really good at bullshitting.
Not quite, mate. But
Just joking.
Oh, that hurt my feelings. But anyway, no,
we're not cutting it. It's staying in.
But no. So basically, he's like, "Hey, come over. I'm gonna have lunch with one of my friends who's a recruiter."
Yeah.
And then it's literally like, look, he works here. He works at Rob Walters. He's got a mate that works at Michael Page, and that's how you build your connections. It's actually not just through applying. It's actually applying through jobs. It's actually going out and meeting people. I think, especially when I was younger, I always thought these meetup groups and stuff were absolutely ridiculous. They were actually really important.
Yeah.
Because you just never know that one day that you turn up to the event, there is someone who is the head of HR or the head of sales or, the head of banking. And you talk to them and you're like, yeah, I'm actually, a student looking for work, or I just graduated looking for work. There you go. That is, and they can see you for who you are. They can see your personality. They can, understand that you're, about your experience, that you're, just graduated, or, a student looking for an opportunity. That is the best place to, probably meet
I
people.
love that it all comes back to this, so there's some validity
Yeah.
to it. And on that note, I think it's important to add as much value to this show as possible. And I know a lot of people, okay, this kind of ties back into the belief thing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our themes tie back into this, people being able to see your personality. And for some people, they might be like super introverted and they might be terrified of the idea of
Yeah.
networking. They might not feel comfortable portraying themselves in a certain manner, but for sure, I know I don't want to say fixable as if they're broken, but it's something that
Yeah.
you can change to your advantage.
Of course. I think, look, some people are inherently, very shy and, not that open to meeting people, and are very, kind of, how do you call it? Yeah, just don't like meeting people, and they don't, they're very kind of like, intrinsic in that sense.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I think, what I could say is it's just worth trying to meet those types of people, because
Yeah.
you just never know. Of course, you can't force it. There are still people that are going to just, apply for jobs continually
Yeah.
without having to make the effort. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. But I can guarantee you, if you just get yourself out there, go out to a bar one night and just talk to people,
Just you can't just stand in the corner like a creep.
yeah, exactly.
They
Yeah,
don't know
you
that
don't
I'm
want to
a
be that
Python
guy. Be
master.
like, oh, he's that guy. He looks really approachable, doesn't he? You don't want to be that guy, right?
You know what I think would be a really cool thing to talk about right briefly on this note is, I'm really into this as well. I'm actually reading a book called The Charisma Myth. So I'm super into changing the way people perceive you. I don't necessarily believe that, you should be yourself, especially if you're not comfortable with yourself, because a lot of people aren't.
Yeah.
And there's a voice in the back of their head that really distracts them. And I think that if you have an avatar of a type of person that you want to be, and that person is successful and happy and all of these things, you should try to be that person. So on that note, from the two of us who are interested in this subject, what do you think are 3 to 5 traits of somebody that you as a recruiter or HR or potential networking connection would look at and go, you know what, there's something about this person, I want to help them, stick my neck out for them, get to know them?
Yeah. I think, I actually had this experience at Hayes, and I won't say his name because I don't want him to get embarrassed. But there was a time when this person showed these traits, and I'll explain it in a little bit later. But that made me want to stick my neck out for him.
Okay.
And actually, it took about 5 to 6 interviews. He got rejected 5 to 6 times, but I kept saying, no, I think this guy is gonna do wonders
Yeah.
here. And finally put him in front of one of the other managers. They hired him. This guy got promoted twice in 1.5 years.
What?
And
That's nuts.
the traits were drive, self-motivation, and just confidence. I know that's really hard to, to kind of like describe, but he was just had that vibe. He had that kind of, oozing kind of like essence, kind of like, euphoria about-
magnetism.
yeah, exactly. And, every time I stuck a question to him, he always had something to, whenever I gave him a specific challenge or difficult question, he'd always come back with a great answer. And I think, actually, I'll add a 4th and 5th. Resilience is key.
Yeah.
Being able to take that rejection, get back up,
Yeah.
and then just do it again.
Yes.
I think that's also really, really key. Because I think a lot of people are quite afraid of getting rejected.
Absolutely.
And I think it's so easy to say, but then people actually, it's very hard
Yeah.
to overcome that. And I think, in my first job doing cold call sales, I was getting rejected hundreds of times a day. And you knew who the top sales guys will be, or you knew who would last a day and who would last 2-3 years. It's being able to pick up that phone, speak to someone who you've never spoken to before, and being able to accept no on the
Yes.
phone, or getting sweared at on the phone or being called names on the phone, bang, what are you going to do? Mope about it, get back on the phone,
Oh, absolutely.
you know? And yeah, I think, that kind of, those traits are really, really key. The other one I'd probably say is also, I think, it depends on certain situations, but you've also got to show that you have that humbleness at the same time.
Okay, good
You
one.
know,
Yeah.
whilst you show that you're confident and you are, really, really good at certain things, stay grounded at the same time. I think, that's one of the key things. You don't want this, jackass guy that's saying like, yeah, I smashed the sales and whatever, and I'll do this, this, and this. Because actually, on LinkedIn and actually on YouTube, I follow the guy Simon Squench, I think.
Squench?
I think so.
Simon
Or
Squibb?
Selenk.
Oh,
Anyways,
Simon Sell. Now you got me
yeah.
mixed up.
See,
Selick.
I've said it completely wrong.
Sinek.
Got it. Sinek.
Yes.
So he was talking about digress a little bit, but this relates to
Yeah.
this. Is because obviously he worked with the Navy SEALs, right?
Uh-huh.
And he was saying, what is the optimum of your optimum kind of like person you want in a business? And they basically put a graph, and it was trust on this side and performance on this side.
Uh-huh.
Or I'll do it this way. So they don't want a low performer with low trust.
Yeah.
But they don't want a high performer with high trust, because that's a toxic leader. And he was explaining that they would rather go.
Wait, they don't want a high performer with high trust?
Yeah, because
High trust is good.
No, but it's a toxic leader, and it completely ruins corporations. And he was saying that there's so many high performers with, high performers with low trust.
I was going to say.
Sorry, we gotta cut that out.
He's
Andre.
too trustworthy.
Sorry.
Get him out of here.
Sorry, high performance, low trust.
Yeah.
Because that's a toxic leader, and also he's just going to cause your company absolute shits, right? But you also don't want that kind of they want that in the middle, that middle performer, middle trust is that perfect candidate. And I think going back to what I was saying is that being able to be humble at the same time while showcasing your experience is really, really key.
Okay. What you're saying is fantastic. And there's one thing I want to add to people who are like, okay, how do I become more resilient? Right? There's a fantastic book I read years ago called Rejection Proof. So it's not going to reading a book's not going to help you become more resilient, but it's
Yeah.
going to give you an idea of how the process works, how this guy
Yeah.
did it. And there's another book called Belief or something. I'll have to see
Yeah.
if we can get it in the show notes. And it's all about changing the way you think about these things so that you can become these things. And then
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, becoming rejection proof, for example, is all about putting yourself on the line, stepping out of your comfort zone and getting comfortable with it.
Yeah,
And then it
100%.
comes. So I just want to make sure that we say these things and people, you can't just read a book and all of a sudden become something. So
Yeah.
what can I do to become that role? But, or that type of person. So
Yeah.
there's so many things we can ask. So I have to be very selective with my next few questions here. One of the things I wanted to talk about, I think a lot of people, especially since I've started doing this series, tend to come back to me and they get really excited about like the interview tips or tricks or how to present
Yeah.
yourself on an interview.
Yeah.
I think that's like an inherent fear or insecurity for a lot of people, is not necessarily, I do all the things correctly behind the screen.
Yeah.
And then they get nervous when they have to
Yeah.
show up. So let's talk about really quickly interview prep and in-interview tips.
Sure. I think, most common things I see is getting nervous, a lot of fidgeting, no eye contact and whatever. So I'd probably say, the first few things to prepare for an interview is do your research.
Yep.
It sounds so basic, but it makes the difference. Finding out who your hiring manager, who you're going to be interviewing with, finding the LinkedIn profile, finding the website of the company that you're interviewing, shows that you actually care about the company, but also the job. So
Okay.
it just shows that you've taken the time to actually do some research, find out a bit about the company, and therefore, I'll go into it later, ask questions as well,
Yes.
which is really important because
Flip the table on them.
exactly,
I'm interviewing you.
that's the whole point. Show them who's boss.
Yeah.
In a way. But yeah, so I think do your research. Second thing is if it's, during COVID, it was huge, about tech and, tech problems. And I had candidates call me like, oh my gosh, it's not working. You've got to, especially for, Teams meeting or Zoom meeting, make sure you do your prep on the tech.
Yes.
That was kind of like a thing that I made. Do your prep on the tech.
That's your tagline?
Yeah, that's my tagline. I love it.
Keir Oakes, do your prep on the tech.
Do the prep
That's
on
the
the
prep
tech.
tech guy. Yeah.
Because, your mic doesn't work. Your camera's not on.
Yeah.
Internet connection's
Yeah.
fuzzy or whatever. That disrupts and causes kind of, that interruption in the interview. And that actually causes like downward momentum in that interview as well.
Okay.
Especially for me, if someone doesn't get their mic on or their camera on, it's really bugging. So
it
make
does.
sure your camera is on if it is a digital
Yeah.
interview. It is hard to build that rapport over a video call, but it shows that you have that engagement. You try to have that eye contact. Of course, if you got your notes, try not to constantly look at them, but also
Guilty as charged.
have that kind of like there. Also, when you're in a face-to-face interview, eye contact is always key. Actually, let me just roll back. I'm skipping a few steps
okay.
here. Firm handshake, key for me, 100%. If you give me a flimsy handshake like I'm the queen, you're out that door.
The
Sorry.
wet fish. The limp fish. I don't know why it's wet.
You've got to show your professionalism. Having this weak handshake,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean it shows that you don't care.
You don't have any of the things that we just talked about.
Yeah,
Confidence,
exactly.
magnetism, resilience.
That confidence
Yeah.
lacks.
Yeah.
Gone. Big X.
Yeah.
Firm handshake is key. Eye contact
Mm-hmm.
when you do a handshake as well. Like, hi, Keir,
Yes.
nice to meet you. That's good engagement because you're showing that you have the respect and you'll appreciate the time of the interviewer, meeting with you.
Yes. Basic competencies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then when you sit down, eye contact, you don't have to stare at them all the time. That's freaky, okay?
Yeah.
But just when you're talking about certain points, always remain eye contact.
Yes.
I think that's also key. Don't be talking to the wall. Don't be talking to, the I don't know, whiteboard or whatever. Have, your focus on the
Yes.
interviewer. If you have trailing eyes, it just doesn't help.
That's something I struggle with. I always have
Yeah.
when I'm talking. Sometimes I need to think and I look away, but like I think I make up for it by looking back. And people
Which
get
is fine,
it makes me seem like some sort of idiot
Yeah.
savant. Like, oh, he's so brilliant, he has to.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be a
It's my
staring.
thing.
It doesn't have to be a staring competition, right? But you've got to show that
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
interested in that
Yes.
conversation and you are engaged. And I think I see. I've interviewed so many people over the years, and they're they're talking here. They're like wandering eyes and I'm just like, are you here for an interview or
Yeah.
are you just here to waste my time?
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. Also, be clear and concise. I know that's very difficult, in a short space of time with an interview, but I think that is down to practice.
Okay.
So again, one of my tips later, I would say, is do practice interviews with your family or your friends. That helps. Honestly, it sounds really silly, but it honestly makes the process of the actual interview far less intense
Yeah.
than it actually is, because I treat it as you're just meeting someone new in a professional environment, and what you need to just take away in terms of fear and stuff is all of that.
Yeah.
Take away the fear, take away the anxiety, take that away, take the negative mindset. Treat it as if you're meeting someone new in a professional setting and they've taken the time out to meet with you to know about your experience.
Yeah. Visualize success. So I heard actually was in the book The Charisma Myth, where it was first imagine imagine some entity, the universe. Close your eyes, put all of your stress into that entity, and then literally play through the scenario. If it's an interview, play through it as positive as possible. You go in there, you're killing it, you're confident, you're making them laugh, they're having a fantastic time, and run through this as vividly as possible in your head until you open your eyes and you can't believe that you weren't actually in the experience. And a lot of executives say, that this works. So that's what they do. That's
Yeah.
what people do. So there's more actionable advice from this fantastic show
Yeah.
for our millions of viewers.
It's worldwide, global.
Yeah. How are we on time? Okay. We'll wind it down. So let's take a moment to talk about what you're up to these days.
Yeah. So I basically work for a human capital firm called Darmax. So we basically help companies with any human capital related issues or human resources kind of like needs. So whether it is change and transformation, whether it's restructuring, whether it's training, so we do bespoke training, one-on-one training, group training, executive leadership management training, and we also do talent solutions as well. For my role, I'm heavily involved with due to my experience, down to the HR transformation and change. So I go to companies and I help them improve their business by improving the HR processes that they currently have or any challenges that they're facing. I also do all the training as well. So whether it is, interview tips and, how to actually interview from a hiring manager point of view.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that actually don't know how to interview.
Yeah.
And they're not getting the best out of the interview.
Right.
So therefore they're not able to identify if that candidate is strong or not.
Okay.
So that's a key thing as well. It's not just a one-way street. Actually,
Right.
it's a two-way, kind of like conversation. So it's also important for these hiring managers to understand how to get the best how to find the best kind of like candidates and what questions to ask, how to kind of like, go through the recruitment process, go through that kind of journey, because there's a lot of companies or candidates that I've, spoken with, and they just get the ghost. They don't hear anything back, and it's kind of like, yeah, I just, spoke with the hiring manager and didn't get anything
Yeah.
back. And that's
We all hate that.
And that's why especially when I was over at Hayes, is creating that kind of like journey, both for the candidate and also internally, to make sure that you do feel valued throughout this process. You're
Okay.
not just number that we've had to hit in that month just for the sake of it. We do appreciate your time coming to the office, sharing your experiences, and there are ways to be able to deal with that. I also do kind of like one-on-one kind of like coaching and training. So a lot of people, come to me and they want kind of, career advice, and they want me to look into their CVs and touch it up and, have those like interview
Okay.
kind of like skills, how to be better,
Yeah.
and, what things to say, what not to say. So that's kind of like what
I think that I had met you guys prior. You do
Yeah.
executive training where
Yeah.
you help executives like understand what, correct me if I'm wrong, what sort of things that they can be doing to improve, because you believe it or not, executives are humans too.
Yeah,
Who knew?
of course.
And they go through some of the similar, some
Yeah.
similar frustrations, or
100%. Yeah.
they're relatable. They're people like us.
Yeah.
But no, I was really interested to hear some of the training that you guys do for executives to help them like overcome anxiety and imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So like, what is a typical, just like, I think that's a really cool thing to share, just to bring it down to earth. Cause
Yeah. I mean, look, I do all level kind of like training, so it's from juniors all the way up to executive level, and like you said, we're all human.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes,
Yeah.
and as humans, we always want to learn,
Yes.
and I think that's the beauty of being a human being, is the fact that we are always constantly wanting to learn and develop ourselves. And look where we are with technology. If we apply that, into ourselves, who knows? We can, expand the capacity endlessly. But with the executives, it's sometimes more on a personal level. Actually, how to create a good culture. Where does that start? And it's a
Yes.
trickle down effect. A lot of
Yes.
people think, oh, it's actually from the ground to bottom up. It's actually from the top. It's got to be directive from these top tier executives to drive that culture, to be that example and lead by example. And I think that's what's really great with the executives that I've been working with is that openness to change.
Okay, that's
And I
beautiful.
think that's the most important thing. Is because there's a lot of traditional executives that are very 1990s, very much head in the sand, who don't want to change.
90s was a great
You
time,
know,
so power
it
to
was
them.
100%. But at the same time, in a working perspective, things could be improved.
Okay.
And I think that's what really, really great. I get to work with these executives on these different types of topics. We also do a lot of company topics as well. So it's a lot of soft skills. It's a lot of community building.
Yeah.
Because in these businesses that that I work with, they're sometimes 300-400 people, sometimes even up to 1,000 people,
Yeah.
and the departments are so separated, and they don't really get to meet. Sometimes it's a 1-minute conversation in the pantry.
Yeah.
So being able to bring everybody together to have that kind of synergy, that community bonding. So we do off-site activities. So we do a lot of icebreakers and stuff, and it's great because then you're not only creating that kind of synergy within peers.
Yeah.
People actually started to make friendships, and they're really starting to get interested in the other aspects of work, the other departments that they didn't even know existed. That's the joy of it, really opening people's kind of like
That is beautiful.
mindsets.
That is
Yeah.
beautiful. Final question. HR gets a bad rap because if you're not in it, it's very meme worthy. There's a lot of memes on the internet about HR being like
Yeah.
stone face killers, like or fake
Serious face,
crocodile teeth,
Talk to
or
me.
like like just like a smiling face that
Yeah.
will fire you, whilst looking into your soul. So let's do a little bit of three debunking HR myths to paint HR in a good picture and give them a good rap. And I think this will be a fantastic thing to share on LinkedIn.
So from a HR perspective, we are humans too. We have feelings, surprisingly
So
or
myth number
not.
one debunked, not vampires.
Yeah, there you
Okay.
go.
Wow, that's a. If we had to set the bar that low,
Yeah, surprised. No, so honestly, we do actually have a personality, and we actually are there to help you. We're not as stringent or as strict or as direct as we need to be, but we also, the reason why we sometimes come across like that is because we do have to set a standard. We can't just be super casual all the time, because then you're not going to get that respect.
Right.
So there has to be that kind of balance. But a lot of people think, we're cold-hearted, we don't have any feelings, you're letting me go or whatever. We actually, I've unfortunately made people redundant over the years, and I felt terrible going home. Like, it's not nice, knowing that you've let someone go from their job that they've been with for 5-6 years plus, and they've got a family, or they've got financial situations and things like that. That's not nice, but that's one thing I'd say. Two, we like to have fun. We do
pizza parties.
Yeah, we do want to, incorporate, that fun working culture.
Yeah.
So we're not all just, hey, have you completed that training? Hey, have you, sent me over, your, like your expenses?
Yeah,
or
yeah,
hey,
yeah,
have you done
yeah.
it? We also want to, still have fun.
Okay.
We still, whilst we still have to have, kind of like that, branding, so
Okay.
to speak. We've got to wear that hat of professionalism. We still want to make people enjoy work at, the office, and create that fun environment where people can.
That hat comes off sometimes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Number
Number 3 myth, and then I have one final question. No? Can I?
Yeah.
No, let's skip from the myths because
Yeah, all right,
we're
let's
really
skip the
we're really
myths. All right.
saying that people are humans and they have skin. Did you know they have?
I think that's the gist of it, basically.
I had this great one. It was going to be. I want to have something that gets HR rah rah, and it was going to be. Oh Lord. Oh, okay. Yeah. As a candidate, what is one powerful tip, trick, hack you can do to completely magnetically warm the heart of an HR person? Because there's sometimes the first line of defense. One thing that somebody can do to make an HR person completely want to go to bat for them.
Build rapport, 100%. And that's by doing your research, as I mentioned.
You have 2 kids.
So not to go that far, I think, but find on their LinkedIn,
Yeah.
like the university that they went to, or look at something that's something potentially in common.
Yeah.
So whether you're from the same country, or whether you studied at the same university, or you studied the same course, or something like that. You can even say, like, when you go into the interview, they would be like, oh, how are you? Like, yeah, good, I did X and X over the weekend. How about yourself? I think that's always just being showing that you have that kind of personal touch is important. But yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's perfect. Keir, this has been a blessing. This has been an
Thanks so
amazing
much for
show.
having me. I've
I think
absolutely loved
there's
it.
so much to chop up here and reuse that I think people are going to love this one. And we're going to have you back because I have like still
100%.
dozens of questions.
I feel
But
like we could literally make like volumes and volumes.
you'll have to be a
of-
recurring guest.
I love
It's time
it.
for Chicken in a Basket, my friends.
Let's do it.
Thank you for watching or listening.
Peace.